Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SEEDIG 7 Series C Brainletting, how to make internet governance more inclusive and efficient. My name is Olga Kirilyuk. I'm chair of SEEDIG Executive Committee. This event is indeed special to us because this is not a usual thematic discussion, but rather an open, honest, and forward-looking conversation between all of us. And by us, I mean colleagues who are working in the internet governance ecosystem, both inside and outside the region of Southeastern Europe. The idea behind this event is simple. In the never-ending cycle of issuing the call for proposals, preparing the agendas for the meeting, then running the meeting themselves, then analyzing how it all went, we rarely have an opportunity and a chance to slow down and to reflect on whether everything we do actually makes a difference. And this is why we invited all of you today to brainstorm together on whether we need to do something differently in order to make our efforts in internet governance more efficient. We are utmostly grateful to the United Nations Internet Governance Forum Secretariat, who supported our idea from the very beginning and joined us as the co-organizer for this event. We also want to express huge gratitude to all of you who found time in your busy schedules to be here with us today and to share your experiences and best practices from your national IGF initiatives. From the housekeeping perspective, I want to remind that our today's event, as usual, is live streamed on Facebook and YouTube, and that recording will be available afterwards. I also want to encourage all of you to contribute to the discussion by either using the raise hand button or putting your question or comment into the Zoom chat. Our today's moderation is in very experienced hands of Andrea Beccali, Stakeholder Engagement Director at ICANN. Andrea worked with many of IGF initiatives and has a very good understanding of what we are dealing with on a daily basis. This is why I'm sure that the questions he will be asking will not be easy, but they definitely will be with the practical perspective. We have prepared a very intense agenda for today, and this is why I will not take any more of your time. And on this note, we'll pass the floor for the opening keynote speech to a person who is a great supporter of SEEDIG and who is one of the main driving forces behind the global IGF processes. Associate program expert, and as we better know her, focal point for national, regional, and youth IGF initiatives, Anya Gengo. Anya, warm welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Olga, and so nice to be here. And thank you very much for the invitation and for this important initiative. I firstly would like to say a few words about the, in general, importance of the NRIs and their importance for the global ecosystem, if you would allow me. And then I'm very much looking forward to the next minutes of very exciting sessions, I'm sure. So with that, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for being here. First of all, I firstly would like to thank the organizing committee for the invitation. And I especially would like to congratulate the organizing committee on behalf of the Internet Governance Forum Secretariat for an excellent lineup of sessions organized in these very challenging times we've been living through for some time now. And because of this very difficult moment, having these types of gatherings is even more important because it helps us to maintain the sense of community, a sense of belonging, and a sense that we are not alone. But beyond this, I think it helps us to make the internet a much better place for all, especially as during the COVID-19 pandemic, the internet, its tools and services have never been so important to people. The confinement made us all dependent on it. As for many, it was the only way to continue working, educating, and socializing. And this dependency to being online also exacerbated cyber attacks on individuals, small businesses, bigger corporations, other big systems, including on critical infrastructure. It also vividly illustrated that being offline in the past couple of months also meant being deprived of certain rights and freedoms such as to work, to educate, and overall to live a decent life. We have all been affected one way or another, and the IGFs, 137 of those, organized at national or regional levels, just as SEEDIG, were of course not an exception to this. Like the IGF itself, the biggest majority of the NRIs were forced to explore new online means of facilitating their processes. And for example, last year, so over 70 NRI meetings hosted completely online in different creative forms and formats. The digital policy landscape also saw a dramatic shift in discussion priorities, looking through the NRI agendas from the discussion narratives that have been traditionally sort of dominated for years by matters related to trust, security, and safety. Now we had a shift toward discussing more digital inclusion, capacity development in internet governance, meaningful access and connectivity, and specifically new terms introduced: e-education, e-health, e-trade. All of these received most prominence last year. Climate change and environment also started to gain more attention and earned space on many of the NRI agendas. The NRIs, as multi-stakeholder, bottom-up, open, inclusive, and non-commercial processes, proven their commitment to improving internet governance at national, regional, and with that at the global levels, despite of the global challenges we have been facing. Slowly but surely, we're getting back on tracks. Many NRIs presently are organizing their meetings in hybrid, innovative formats with an on-site component, but also a strong online component. Through the NRIs, the IGF Secretariat, as their entrusted neutral facilitator of the collective work, has seen that countries and regions indeed face different priorities and they have different conditions related to internet governance. And all this further tells us that the internet, in spite of its global and cross-territorial nature, is basically a puzzle, a mosaic composed of specificities pertaining to local levels. And this also means that related issues and potentials are very specific to local levels and dependent on strong local level. It further also means that the global nature of the internet, including accessibility, affordability, security, and safety, can only be improved and maintained if we all work together. And I wish to thank SEEDIG for helping us to achieve this by the mere fact that the SEEDIG is gathering us today in the framework of this session to discuss how can we strengthen local processes and ensure that we have a strong internet governance global ecosystem. I'm truly looking forward to our discussion in the next 2 hours, and I'm sure its outputs will feed perfectly into the IGF 2021 discussions the NRIs collectively will co-host. From the IGF 2021 venue in Katowice in Poland, we will be discussing means for improving the NRIs at the dedicated NRIs coordination session, which will be hosted on 6th of December. And in addition to that, the whole meeting in Katowice will also be very much dominated by a number of NRIs through the NRIs main session, as well as through the 5 NRI collaborative sessions, but also the involvement of the NRIs in other program sessions, which will be hosted in Katowice. Today, I know that we have a wonderful group of speakers coming from NRI networks and also international processes who traditionally support the NRIs. And I really have to recognize a number of them. Such, for example, is the IGF Support Association, the Internet Society and its foundation, the RIPE-NCC, ICANN, and so on, a number of global initiatives that are proven friends to a number of NRIs for years. What is very important today is that we have colleagues and friends coming from outside of the geographic region of Southeastern Europe, which is sort of the focus of SEEDIG. And that's very important to build cooperation across countries and regions. We can all learn from each other, regardless how physically far away we are, as long as the internet keeps us close. With a warm invite to all of you to also join the 16th annual IGF meeting in Katowice, hosted by the government of Poland from 6th to 10th of December, online or in person. I now would like to give floor back to Olga and Andrea, our moderator, to finally start this dialogue, already promising to be very exciting. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anya. Actually, the floor is now to Andrea. So he's running this whole event. So Andrea,
Okay, so let's get it started. Just a couple of words. Thank you for organizing that and for daring to have me as a moderator. I just want to say, how much is a pleasure for me to do that. I do consider you, this particular community, to be those with the foresight of having been among the first, if not the first, among of you, in looking at issues related to the governance of the internet that were, of little to no interest to the most of the world population. When the first global IGF was held in 2006, I think roughly 20% of the world population was online. It was less than 1 billion. In 2006, I think Twitter was founded. YouTube was 1 year old, and Facebook was only available to those attending some, not all, some American universities. And yet, in this community, many of the issues that now make the headline were very present and and relevant to be discussed, and they continue to be so. And so it's really a privilege to be with this community. And now that we are not anymore alone, that these issues are making daily headlines, it's yet even more important to address those issues that continue to be as thorny, as complex, even more. So we need this larger bottom-up inclusive model to really address those. But so that's really my privilege, what really drives me in keeping this job for many years. But let's get into the discussion. So we have you as you, meaning Anya, Sandra. You basically manage the first layer of and Jennifer, the first, let's say, regional layer of the NRIs, of the national initiatives. And I would like to start, asking, first of all, how did you, react with and I'll ask you to to be very brief. The goal here is to have some ground rules, is to have some discussion among us, and really we are among. I think we know all each other, more or less. So to keep it brief and interactive. So how did you react at first with the shift to the complete online format? I mean, this is something that drastically changed the way we interact, drastically changed the formats that we design these events. And in a way, I think it showed to you and to us how little we really took seriously the remote participation, and how, despite touting ourselves as the internet, savvy, had to face lots of problems that we thought weren't that important. So let me ask that to Jennifer first. How did you address that, particularly in a region that it's wide and diverse, and so I think the remote part was always that present.
Thank you, Andrea. Hello, old friends and new friends. My name is Jennifer Chung. I'm part of the Asia Pacific Regional IGF Secretariat. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to share the learnings from the Asia Pacific region. It's a very good question, Andrea, because the Asia Pacific region is very vast, it's very diverse, and there are many challenges, especially to do with access, and even being able to participate online is a privilege in many of the countries in our region. And especially, I guess, the shift to moving it completely virtually has been a challenge, especially since COVID has ravaged our region, particularly. It made it particularly difficult. Originally, we had our host country, as we move host countries every year. Originally, our host country was Nepal last year, and in the shift to moving everything virtually, we had to redesign and rethink how we can meaningfully engage our stakeholders in our community to participate in really important internet governance dialogue. And one of the things we did to prepare for that last year was to establish a new committee, which is the events committee, to look at the different internet governance forums and meetings and learn from how best to translate what is largely in-person interactions and experiences and sharing into something that can be replicated in some part online. And this particular committee has done a lot of heavy lifting, learning from different meetings such as ICANN and RightsCon and of course other NRI initiatives who had their meeting before us to be able to bring this to the Asia Pacific region. Another thing that was very challenging also, of course, is to make sure that the underserved community will still be able to participate. And we enlarged language translation is also, and also sign language interpretation for that. So I'll stop here and would like to learn a little bit more from, I guess, other colleagues as well.
Andrea, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you. I was saying that, Jennifer, you made a very good comment, and you actually highlighted how one of the basic principles of the IGF, which is inclusivity, showed its limits during the pandemic. And you really went even with sign language, for instance, with the languages. And this is indeed a challenge. It requires some imagination, requires some innovation, requires resources, and requires also addressing the model and evolving it to the new situation. And that I would like to hear from Olga to share also the experience that SEEDIG brought this year, even this session. Also the idea of not having one single event, but spreading it through the year in different events. And so how this you found now that you're basically halfway almost, how did you find that addressed some of the issues of inclusivity, of participation, and whether you think this is a way forward?
Thanks, Andrea. I must say directly that this is not an easy process, because the decision we took, it was also not supported by everyone from the very beginning. There have been some skepticism and some concerns about distributing the meetings throughout the year, but we decided to try something new, because there is always a room for improvement and for doing things differently. So we decided to try this approach, and I can say that it works really well. We managed to get quite high participation, and we managed to reach out to people who would probably in other circumstances would not participate in our meetings. We also got this benefit of looking what are the catchy topics throughout the year. Maybe something pops up not at the beginning of the year when we are just starting to draft and approve the agenda for the meeting, which if it is happening as a one-time event. But in this case, we have more flexibility, but also it becomes a little bit more difficult to check also the calendars of the other NRIs so that we don't overlap, not only in terms of thematic discussions, but also in terms of timing. And also, I'm joking that this whole year became a never-ending SEEDIG story, because you have to, once you complete one event, you have already to be thinking about the next one. But overall, I would say this is a good experience, and probably for the future, this would be also something that we could implement in the hybrid format, because hybrid is not only about having remote participation and giving it a bit more attention, but probably it will be also a combination of, let's say, one bigger on-site event with some smaller intersessional activities, or maybe some sessions specifically dedicated to online audience, while some panel discussions would stay for the face-to-face mode. So it's all to be seen, but I think the more we experiment, the better we can become.
Thank you, Olga. That's very useful, and it's a good lead to my last question for this round, and it's basically to Sandra. As Sandra, it's here among the NRIs, I think the oldest NRI. If I'm not wrong with my recollection, and it's one that has been built in a time where a pandemic was something that you wouldn't even study in history books. Was kind of a word that would have to go and pick it up in a dictionary. And it built a lot of the experience around physical meetings. So my question to Sandra is twofold. On one side, I know that the last EuroDig experimented with new format of virtual meeting, and if you can kind of give some backgrounds on that. And the other question, that it's more, also from your experience, how much do you measure the success of IGFs with with the participation, with the meeting in itself, with holding a meeting, with gathering, hundreds of people, with having bilateral? Was that something that, kept us from evolving? Was something that we needed as an essential element, and we'll have to go back to that measurement? What's your experience and take from that one?
Thank you, Andrea. And hello, everyone. First of all, I think we started around the same time as the Latin American IGF started. So we were not the first, but we were early, that's true. And I think IGF Italy was even a little bit earlier, but IGF Italy is a national one. So you're asking how we experienced this change to the online space coming from physical meetings. I must say I was not afraid at all in the first moment to shift to fully online mode. Why this? Because remote participation in this community always played a big role. Might that be on IGFs, on ICANN meetings, or elsewhere. And in EuroDig in particular, it was also thanks to the great efforts from Diplo Foundation and the Remote Participation Working Group in the early days, who even in 2009 or even earlier always demanded that we must offer an opportunity for participants that cannot be online. And so EuroDig was always paying a lot of attention into remote participation. And the pandemic in this respect only put us all in the same boat. And to be honest, I felt quite prepared already. Don't get prepared wrong. Of course, there was a lot of new territory to enter. But from a technical point of view, I knew this is possible. The only difference will be that everyone is online now. And this basically created much more equality among all participants. And this, in my respect, was a very positive aspect in terms of broadening the methodologies of participation. And in this respect, it is always discussed in questions what the outcome of the IGF and the NRIs and so on were. I consider the ability of this community to shift from physical to virtual mode within a second. I consider this is an outcome. And this community was an early adapter in this respect. And friends asked me, how could I still continue my work that involved so much travel in the past? And how could I still go on without traveling? And we have to be aware that we are early adapters, and other industries suffered much more because they were not able to shift to an online mode from 1 minute to the other. And this was basically a great achievement of this community, that we could do this and that everyone was willing to do so. And we know that many in this community, IGF, ICANN, whatsoever, for us, are also working on a voluntary basis. So that needs even more highlighted and respected in this respect, I think. And now, after 18 plus months after the pandemic, I think we all feel the same. We are tired of online meetings. We want to meet again. We want to shake hands. We want to hug. We want to have a glass of wine. But what is even more important for physical meetings is this component of building trust. And also here, I think this community could gain a lot from the past because we all met at some point already. And so a lot of trust was already involved here, and we could continue in an online format by building on the good relationships that we had, by building on the informal talks that we had, and by building on that we clinked a glass of wine at some point. Now I think we have to refresh all this and clink a glass of wine soon again. But it was even possible to involve new communities because everyone kind of got used to these online working methodologies. The question, the other was, how do we measure success? I think here, and this was something that keeps me busy in my daydreams or night dreams, and I'm really thinking about this a lot. At success of those kind of meetings many times is measured only if there were a lot of participants and if they have been active, if many people spoke up and if the discussion was lively. I think that's a good criteria for to measure success, but I think we shouldn't forget that we always had, also in physical meetings, silent listeners. People that were just sitting in the room, taking their notes, going home to the home or back on the working desk and incorporating what they have just heard in the legislation, in the research, in whatever field this was needed. And I think those people are sometimes underestimated when speaking about how we measure success. And this is not measurable, of course not, because we cannot look into people's mind. We cannot really trace who got an idea at an IGF and who incorporated it later on, and so on and so forth. But we must make sure, or we must underline every time where that's possible, that these kind of societal debates that we are at the IGF forums hosting, that these are so important for an opinion building process. And that this cannot be always measured with hard facts. And I think that's really something we should consider. And now when comparing physical meetings and virtual meetings, we also see a number of people that follow just the stream, and that's fine for them. They don't want to raise a hand. They don't want to participate in the breakout session. They don't want to enter in a discussion. But they are following it, and for them, what we are discussing is of great importance. And there was another point I wanted to mention, and I forgot.
Sandra, I'll leave you the time to go and grab this last thought, because we need to, unfortunately, we are running against time. And I wanted to ask the last, of course, the hardest question to Anya. She can bear that. And it follows also what Sandra mentioned, and trying to keep everything on a thread. We had UN Security Councils remote. We had the General Assembly completely remote, with heads of state making intervention remote. We had European councils remote. We had, within the UN, major internal conferences remote. Will we go ever back to a full physical driven IGF? And is it the next one in coming up in Katowice, the last one of the digital and the first one of the physical, or or the first one of something that we still don't know what is it?
That is an interesting question, maybe even difficult, as you said, Andrea, but thank you. It's a very good question, and many are asking it. I think, firstly, the IGF was never solely a physical event. It was never, it was once solely a digital event, that's true. But as Sandra said, the IGF from its very beginnings was investing strongly, really, in meaningful online participation, what at the beginning was called remote participation. Of course, I don't think anyone in the team was working with the attention or any kind of prediction that there will be a time where you're really going to be forced by external forces to host completely online meeting. But I think the whole idea was that the nature of the internet really allows for you to participate meaningfully online, and that those are the potentials which are of benefit for so many people in so many countries and regions which cannot afford to travel or cannot just afford time-wise to travel as well for different reasons. So I think the IGF will definitely continue to work on both components, improving it as much as that's possible. So that means a strong online component and a strong on-site component. What we are doing now is we're in a, indeed, as colleagues said, in a challenging, but also I think creative phase. And we're fortunate to have so many friends in the UN, outside of the UN, with the host country, across the NRIs, to really share experiences, share creative ideas that were already tested, so we can learn from experiences of others to ensure that those participating from some part of the world through a digital device and through the means of the internet, and those participating from the venue of the IGF will have as equal as possible conditions. And the reason why I'm using on purpose these words is because I think we need to be realistic and should draw the line somewhere. And that is the fact that if you are not physically present there, it's very difficult to create those strong networking opportunities on the margins of the meetings, which I'm sure many can associate, usually create the strongest cooperative ties between people. They create friendships long-term, and from some of those friendships, the internet already benefited long-term. So that is something that we see as a huge challenge. But for sure, as I said, we will continue to work toward strong online and strong on-site participation. The IGF in Katowice, given the registration numbers so far, seems to be promising in terms of the people who will be present physically there. Especially, it seems to be promising when it comes about the number of requests we are receiving from stakeholders from all parts of the world asking about conditions in terms of the travel, in terms of the visas, in terms of the health and safety concerns related to staying at the venue. And especially, I think it's promising when it comes about the commitment and dedication of our host country to ensure that everyone that will be there in the Katowice venue will be safe and secure in terms of the COVID-19 health constraints currently present in the world everywhere. I think the visa procedures as well are very important. Many of you may know that it's becoming even more challenging with the COVID-19 restrictions being of different nature in different countries, especially for those transitioning to different countries. And the host country is very much also committed to ensure that there is a smooth, but then again, safe and secure for everyone path of traveling to Katowice. Those that will not be able to travel, we are doing really our best to ensure that there is a meaningful way to participate in all discussions. And especially in those parts where we have, after exhausting discussions on internet governance, friendly, warm chats about not just internet governance, but also on a friendly basis and outside just of what's the focus of the meeting. So I mean, on social events, on networking opportunities, that's something that we're hoping to also ensure to fill in the gap. But that's the momentum we're living now. So I hope that many of you will be able to indeed join us in Katowice in person. If not, then I'm sure that there will be meaningful opportunities to really participate in, I think, excellent discussions that are already on the program organized by stakeholders from all parts of the world.
Okay, Anya, thank you. So while we transition to the second session, and I thank the speakers for the first session, and while they're leaving the stage, the virtual stage, although they will stay with us, I'll just ask a very quick show of hands on how many of you are planning to go to Katowice. So we see how much is going to be hybrid. You can use your virtual or your physical hands. You choose one of those. So we'll see how much is hybrid or okay. So it's going to be, it's going to be increasingly physical. Until when we will figure out what the metaverse is and what Facebook is going to sell us. I think we're going to have this experience ourselves with a physical event. Okay, now So thank you again. That was a great start of the panel. We are running a bit late, but I think discussion has been so interesting so far that I didn't feel it getting over schedule. And now, let's do something that actually was invented by a couple of Europeans. Let's do like a Google Map zoom in. So Google Map was invented by a couple of Danish in 2004. And so we now go and go down to the country level, to those organizing national IGFs, taking up, the model from the global and the regional one, and then pushing it forward to in their local communities. And that's probably among the most exciting innovations are happening, where the IGF gets closer and closer to the issues of the internet governance. So let's introduce. So we will have Mattia Fantinati from the Italian IGF, which is the Italian IGF. Actually, Italy is just will be announcing. That I know for a fact, the National IGF Association at the upcoming National IGF, and Mattia is the president of the National IGF Association, so he can also tell us a bit more this initiative. Then we have Andre Starto from the Estonia IGF organizing team. And then we have Harimino Racontadrainibe. I'm sorry if I smashed your last names, Harimino, but I tried. From the Madagascar IGF coordination. And then we have Ilona Stadnik from the Russian IGF. Hello, Ilona. And then Alexander from the Macedonian IGF, the coordinator. So it's, we are really going across continents here, and a very diverse series of IGF that were born in different time, and they kind of got influences from each other. And as we learned from this nasty virus, it kind of keeps changing and recombining and mixing. I think the national IGFs are doing the same. Everyone is kind of taking something from another national IGF, mixing and making something different and more interesting. So let's start. So I would like to start, asking to you, what's your experience on how do you grow your national communities? How do you, feel that there is this need and there is this impulse to have a national IGF, and then from there, you get into actually organizing one? How do you take these and bring it into something that is recognized? And I would like to start with you, Harimino, because I know that you have a very interesting experience and story with that.
Okay, thank you. So just for the record, my name is Harimin Rakutunjante, so don't worry, it's fine the way you pronounce it. So regarding the community in Madagascar, so just for a bit of history, we actually begin to try to have the IGF in 2018. So we had a kind of offline session, but offline session, but we were actually not part of the NRI at that time. So I say that just to say that there was actually the community was already there. There was people who are involved in internet governance without actually being aware that they were involved. So what we've done is not really creating the community, but more about raising awareness that they were part of the community and they have to be aware of that. And so we had a kind of capacity building just as a way to, how to say that, to put a definition on what the community in Madagascar is already doing. So in 2020, we tried to have the community officially recognized at the IGF Secretariat. And to reach that recognition, we, as I say, we had a capacity building with PREDA. So we held the first school on internet governance. And so to sustain the pertinence in the community, so we try to have the people who take part in the school on internet governance taking part in the organization of the IGF after the school. And also because, as I say, there is a lack of awareness. Like there is, in Madagascar, there is a lot of initiatives and organizations who are actually working in the development of the internet or in the development of the capacity of the youth who are taking part in the internet ecosystem. So we reach on those organizations just to actually try to have a kind of collaboration in a way to grow the community. Thank you. I hope this answer is clear.
Yes, thank you, Rimino. That's very good to hear how actually, you know, in a country, you start from a community all the way up and you kind of jumpstart the initiative. And now, you know, let me shoot up north, you know, going straight from Madagascar to the far north. Let me go to a country that for years was the connecting people country, was the one actually before the iPhone landed in our pockets and changed the way we interact with the internet, made mobile communication happen. And it's the country that also brought us some very angry birds. And so I'll stop my trivia here. I'll go to Andres Tarto from the actually I'm sure I'm wrong. Actually, you got the Skype.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I was about to. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and so a country that is, you know, smaller, you know, but very, very aware of all the internet developments, very much connected, very much proficient. How the national IGF in this case becomes a place for influencing and shaping policies, of making an impact, rather than just gathering the community. How do you experience that in? And sorry for confusing you with the country across the pond.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you very much. Yeah, nice to be here. I'm rather new here, so my time scope, of course, is not that long. Of course, yes, I'm being, let's say, active internet user for decades, and really, yes, it's kind of a trademark of our country that we are very government country and so on. And yes, Angry Birds came from Finland, not in Estonia, but yeah, you were very near by. But what to say? I think, which was already mentioned here at the beginning, the subjects, I mean the topics which we raise up must be relevant, must gain attention, and it's kind of secret that there is no, I mean, there is no secret. It must be relevant. There must be a newsworthy in those themes which we address, I mean, publicly during our national Internet Day. And if it is so, then we gain the attention, and then the community also reflects it. Of course, there is a crucial thing of the timing, because let's say how we know that this or that subject is very hot at the moment when we are kind of preparing it. If we prepare it with the program team and then fix the panelists and everybody, and then some weeks go by and just something happens and another matter is much more important. So this is the thing, I mean, which you can't know beforehand, and you must be very kind of flexible. For example, this year, at the very spring, when we had this Internet Day, we kind of took a risk to make it in a hybrid, not in a hybrid, fully video mode, but just to arrange it, I mean, in a classical way in television studio. So all the panelists came there and so on, and not a lot of issues about inclusivity. I mean, we had 2 Zoom channels involving not only the participant who couldn't join us physically, but the second Zoom was for the community, so they could ask questions. But coming back to this event, the subject itself, our most attractive subject was the fake news, because it's very typical and it's old theme and nothing new there. But this same COVID opened it from the new perspective, because at the very spring, it was very sensitive, because all the anti-vaxxers were already doing their websites, writing there that it's not too good to vaccinate and so on. So this is the thing which we did, and it kind of happened to be at the right moment, and then we got much more impact than we would have otherwise. So yes, this is one thing I'm sure.
Mr. Andrea, I'm sorry, we have a question.
Yeah.
From Amali De Silva, there is a question.
Yes. Now I see that. Okay, Amali, do you have a question? Do you want to take the floor, or you wrote the session?
You can read it. Bye.
The question is, if we don't use our own tool, the internet, how and we better it? Is that the question?
There is another question, if we must promote all the devices related to the internet.
Wait, I'm not seeing this question in my... Amali, please, just unmute yourself and jump in. I think you're unmuted. You can go. Okay, while we figure Amali's microphone, I see there is another hand. Liliana, please, you have a question also?
Yes, well, I have a comment somehow to interrupt the positive atmosphere here that was created already. And I'm sorry to do that. Although it is a good start to start positively, and what are the positive outcomes of being online, yet I need to say much more about the challenges that we had. For example, at the youth school, we are organizing within SEEDIG. As much as we had to reorganize the format of SEEDIG this year, and it marks 7 events as 7 years of SEEDIG, but nevertheless, we wanted to apply the same format for the youth school, and we organized 7 series of small talks or inviting speakers and guests from different organizations that are in the IG area or topics related. But I need to say that we encountered different kind of challenge, and this was the participation of the number of participants. And I saw that Sandra is measuring this as a success mechanism, like the number of participants actually introducing in the meetings and interactive. And our conclusion is basically that maybe online meetings are good enough or good for such level of discussions or such level of community that we are already here, like the community that already has established some kind of trustworthiness, if I can also quote Sandra, and reliable, let's say, relations that we or communications that we have encountered in the past. But nevertheless, we found that online education tool is somehow a bit exhausting, and
may I say, boring at the end, because you have 1 hour and a half presentations and you have less possibility for different kind of physical interaction and explaining and interacting with students. So it is a challenge already for this online or hybrid format, as you say. But we can propose to divide it as online presentations having enough positive side for networking, something that we miss a lot in this physical, let's say, when we meet each other in the same physical location. I remember Berlin IGF was superb positive experience for me when we could, listen to each other, but nevertheless meet and discuss on face-to-face, and it's a different kind of trustworthiness and relations established in this part. And online is only a supportive tool, how I see it, so a supportive tool to continue the discussion, continue the dilemmas or the points that we want to raise, but not as a first type of first tool or mechanism for starting an educational processes. It is a very challenging and very hard way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. Indeed, you see, I mean, already saying that here, the difficulties of the online. We would have end this session and continue this discussion in the room until someone would come and kick us out. But we can't really do that. So we need also, I think, it really requires a lot of changes in our kind of social behavior and how even how we interact to each other. And that's a big challenge, something that we haven't processed and organized yet. And I think that's yet another challenge for these initiatives that were so much designed into a pre-existing kind of social network model where you would meet people and then from there get ideas, and then with those people you can continue discussing, and then through them you'll organize something, you will get the funding. So that's something I think I'm seeing that now how hard. And I would like to speak with any one of you, but we have to kind of base ourselves on that. Amali, do you have your microphone back? Otherwise, since time, it's a tyrant. Can you try to speak now? Sorry, I think we don't hear you. Okay, Amali, let's do like that. Just rewrite your question and send it only to me in chat, not the group chat, so I can take it and read it after. And let's continue with the other speakers from the IGFs. And I would like to go to my fellow Italian from the Italian IGF, as I think among us is the only one that not only represents an IGF, but also represents an institution. He is an MP and actually used to be in government just up to a few months ago. So from your perspective for the national IGF, but also from your daily life as an MP, can you tell us more about the experience of institutionalizing the IGF? The national IGF, how to make it, and I think this is a lot of good learning to share with the rest of the NRIs, to make it something that is seen as an institution for other stakeholders in the country, governments first, the private sector. How do you institutionalize your IGF? How do you make it more than just a meeting, just a group of people gathering around an event and a few topics? Can you tell us a bit more around that? Thank you, Mattia.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Ciao, I'm Mattia Fantinati from Italy, a really good friend of Andrea Beccalli, and I would like to thank you, particularly him, just because Andrea Beccalli is involved in Italian IGF and he did give us a great effort, and I would like to thank you once again. I would like to give you my personal experience about the Italian IGF. Now, in a few weeks, we will have in Italy the 13th edition of IGF. So it's a very long process that every year we are meeting. And through the years, a lot of association organize and creates IGF. So we have a lot of Italian association from the university to the institution to the organization, and then it made a path, very, very long path. With, I have to be honest, with a really, really valuable outcome, because I remember that last year we have a huge turnout from Italian IGF. It was hybrid, like the old one, but the turnout of the former IGF in Italy was huge. It was impressive. IGF, Italian IGF, it was submitted to a lot of governments, and in order to create a government institution of IGF, because we know if there is a community that creates something, okay, he has got its value. Otherwise, on the other hand, if there is a government that creates something, is different. The value is totally different. And I, Andrea, and my colleagues, we pressed a lot the government, because the government understood the capability and the role of the IGF and how to use the IGF platforms. But in one case, and a couple of years ago, we went very, very close, because the previous Italian government really believed in the IGF, in the IGF structure, in the IGF community, and the role of IGF, how the IGF can advocate or can, in a sort of way, inspire the political level. And so the previous government tried, because we not succeed, because it was very, very close, but the government fell down. But we tried to create something of IGF, or in institutional way, in a multi-stakeholder board, in a multi-stakeholder level, with all the conditions of IGF. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle for a long, long process of months, and almost 1 year. Because if you want to be involved, all the ministries, all the organizations, all the that are in Italy, but I think in any other continent or in any other states, is a very long debate and a long process. I think that we were so close. We were very, very close to be created, but in a very few days earlier, that we were on the brink to be created, to go to the agency to create the IGF. The previous government fell down, and so we bring up again. The problem is that this creating something and creating this kind of IGF events, we made a huge community. The issue is that if you have something, and you want that something is to be recognized by any kind of institution, you have to put in contact with as many institutions as ever. That's why now the Italian IGF is being created, is being established, and it's a very good reality. We created IGF a couple of months ago. It's not by the government, but the same community that worked for the more than 10 years on IGF. And how we created this kind of association. There are several ways. I will describe our way. We got it together. We create a statement. We went to the tax agency to be recognized as an association. And so in these days, in the last weeks, we try to collect as many stakeholders as possible. And honestly, it's a very, 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 very hard task, because if you want to collect some multi-stakeholder, it's not very easy, because there are a lot of association that runs in the same way as IGF does. I'm perfectly aware of it, but you have to keep going on. I know that in this case we have a lot of helpful by Anya Gengo, by the Henriette, by the Chengatai, because in a sort of way we were recognized by the global IGF. This is a very, very important step and issue. That's why I really thank them a lot for that. But if you want, you have to create on your own in your country. You have to improve. We have to improve and enforce yourself on your own. That's what we are doing. We are creating another event of Italian IGF in a couple of weeks, and we invited a lot of ministries, a lot of very important skilled person from the Italy market and the Italy multi-stakeholder community, and it's really, really important. And so in a sort of way, I am confident, and we are sure that we are in a sort of way, we get them noticed by the government institution. The government didn't come in, didn't step in, didn't recognize the IGF the Italian structures by now, but I'm sure that it will do it, maybe not in a couple of months, but in 1 year, I'm confident that we'll do. IGF is very famous for a lot of huge companies and a huge platform around the world. That's why we already contact this kind of platform in their Italian quarter in order to help us. So we contacted the big five, Amazon, Google, Facebook, because first of all, we have to be recognized. We have to be known by the big platform. We have to be known by the government association. And of course, I don't be ashamed to say that, because it's really important, and we need a fund. Yeah, because to create something, you need fund, you need the people working on, someone in a professional way. That's why if you want to grow up in this kind of association, you need fund. You have a lot of recognition by the other partners that you are in connect to. So this is I'm sure that's a very, very effort, but I'm sure that we succeed, and we are doing a great path. And that's what I want to add. My personal view, like a chairman of Italian IGF. IGF is not an event of 3 days, but it's a process of 1 year of debate. If you want that IGF is able to address the change, if you want that IGF is able to, in a sort of way, to inspire the politician, you need that IGF has been recognized by the politician. And so I try to come in a lot of MPs of Italian Parliament. You need a politician at first, but you need that IGF is recognized by them. So you need to stay in contact with the politician. You need to organize a lot of events, a lot of roundtables in order to create a debate, because from debate, a lot of discussion, a lot of proposals can be arisen. So this is very important, because this is your output. And so it makes a difference to you. Okay, I'm finished. Thank you very much.
No, Mattia, thank you so much. I think your experience, hearing that from a politician, I think it's a privilege. So you kind of know what you are saying, and I can testify that it's a year-long process. I've been having calls with the Italian IGF every other week. I think my girlfriend knows more than I do just listening to those calls in the background. So it's indeed a good experience for you to share. And you made me think, for all the rest, this is a time where, certainly for the European countries, but across the scope, the digital issues are front and center for the European countries. The recovery funds, I think the plans for the European Union is that 30% of these funds is going to be to digital development. So this is the time for the national IGFs really to step up. And to do that, they have to do this kind of extra mile in getting the recognition and setting up those institutions, because this is the clear moment where you move from this so-called, decision shaping into, kind of decision making almost, and being part of how the governance of the internet is designed. So at the beginning, you were at the foresight, but now, you know, you have to be at the center of the fray. You have to be, you know, kind of be the node where these policies are being discussed and influence them. And, you know, and to do so, you know, also to the other challenge, which is not only involving politicians, which is a challenge in itself, but it's a needed one, but a more pleasant challenge, which is the one of involving those that are designing how the internet is being developed and used, which is the youth. And on that, you know, we have some very good experiences on that. You know, this is, you know, what really ensures the sustainability of the IGFs is the involvement of the next generations, those that they can tell you, you know, what TikTok and Twitch is and what is the latest meme, but also what, you know, what are the uses and the impacts of the internet on our societies. And that I would like to ask to Ilona from the Russian IGF, you know, how do you do that? How did you grow your community? How did you engage with the youth? I mean, you yourself, you have an experience of as a youth coming to this discussion, and then from that taking the leadership role. Plus, you're doing that in a country that you know, has a very
has national peculiarities.
Well, yeah, as national peculiarities, the national champions. You know, you have you know, for how much we like those peculiarities. You know, you're not on Facebook only. You also be contacted. You know, you have national champions that many of those countries in Europe they don't, and we wane and we say, you know, Facebook is scooping us, well, but you know, we keep using those. So you know, it's an interesting country. There is a lot of learning to do. So Ilona, please.
Okay, just let me bring you some history, probably. I may surprise you, but I should say that Russian IGF national initiative is quite old. It's from 2010. But the main idea was to build the community and to bring all the stakeholders to the table. Well, I don't know whether it is the case for other countries, but internet governance agenda is not very famous in Russia. So if you talk to ordinary people like, I'm doing some internet governance stuff, people will look at you like, what? What are you trying to govern? Tell me. So, and actually, the team that was behind the Russian IGF made an enormous work to build a resilient community that is in the agenda. And actually, all the national IGFs was kind of a capacity building initiative, because we are trying to bring the global perspective to the Russia, and then some Russian thoughts and Russian people sent to the global meetings so that they can provide some insights from the country. And it was going quite well, but like 3 years ago, we realized that we're really missing a very important stakeholder, it's youth. And I think Andrea can remember that we were running after all internet pioneers and other people who have a lot of say in internet governance issue in Berlin, and asking, so why youth should participate? So we were collecting some kind of interviews on that. And then we started to make some programs. And of course, we understand that it's not expedient just to take some random youth, bring into the events and just say like, okay, listen and go ahead. It's not working. And we decided to go via education. So we started different educational events like seminars. We invited different speakers, experts that were actually involved in the national IGF series, but we invited them to make more nuanced, more detailed presentations about the issues that are on the table at the global IGF and the national IGF, trying to explain what is really internet governance is. So, and then we just added some discussions, we added some practices from our fellow colleagues from SEEDIG. So we started to trying to make some youth messages. Also, we launched the Russian School on Internet Governance, and actually the main focus was to make it in Russian language.
So to bring all the peculiarities to the Russian language, to explain it, and then prepare people to the discourse that exists on the international level, and just let them to step in the discussions. And we were quite successful. So for the last 2 years, we made a quite big youth community that is involved in internet governance issues. And then we have a youth board. And then currently we're preparing different projects. So we're trying to engage more people through the awareness raising, through the education, and through teaching people how to discuss these things and how to participate in other international conferences, because national IGF is okay, but it's not the whole picture. So people should have the confidence in themselves to go out to the big world and have their say. So I will stop here and let the others share the experiences.
Thank you, Ilona. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. And indeed, it's true. Russia is also a very old IGF. It's, as I said, it's a very complex and interesting situation and country to have this initiative. And a lot of learning from you as well. But let me go from a very large country to a very small country, but which they were able to succeed in something that, as we saw from Mattia, is not that evident, with establishing a legal entity, of getting into big recognized institution. So Alexander, maybe you have on your side the advantage that being a small country, it's easier in a way to approach all the relevant stakeholders and involve them, but yet it's not that easy. So it's challenging, and I know that for you took some time. It took some time to achieve that. But please share, how the experience of building up a structure in the Macedonian IGF came to be, and how you were able to involve all the other stakeholders. The relevant ones.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity after a long time, for the known reasons. I'm pleased to note that the IG processes at all levels, national initiative, sub-regional, SEEDIG, EuroDIG, and the global IGF are slowly returning to their regular dynamics. Last year, unfortunately, for the well-known reasons, most of the activities were online format and cancelled, postponed for better times. And I'm glad that the global IGF will continue in Katowice, where Berlin IGF in 2019 stopped. We at the Macedonian IGF, or the National IGF Initiative for the Republic of North Macedonia, as recognized in the United Nations, IGF Macada, primarily in order to maintain the continuity of our work, we held the annual edition of IGF Macada in full COVID online edition. Not to take any more time of this, some small historic perspective that I have prepared, I will jump directly to your question, which concerns legal entity and formation of the legal entity. Mostly because we are young, let's say IGF or NRI. The first annual event was held and organized in 2017. But because since then, until 2019, the only financial support that we got was solely from IGF supporting organization. The main recommendation was to create a legal entity in order to increase accountability, visibility, having a legal structure that could be seen by the sponsors, and by having a registered bank account, authorized person, in other words, accountable partner for for the sponsors. We managed to put together 10. Let me see what happened here.
So I think we lost Alexander.
I think Alexander, I don't know, I think he just, I think he saw Liliana's question and excluded himself. He just disappeared. Alexander, let me know when you are coming back and continue with that.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask actually if there is a method or mechanism or kind of tool where we are ensured this inclusion from all stakeholders. I don't only mean stakeholders from the government, because we don't want to see the government the second best friend in this, but also do we have some steps beforehand, like mapping all of the interested parties, or the parties who are interested to follow with this initiative? This is maybe a heartbreaking story, but nevertheless, it's kind of a challenge, I believe, in each and everywhere. So
this is a very good question. And it probably will take a whole session on that, because this is a crucial one for the national regional IGFs. In a way, the global IGF, sorry, Anya, got it easy, because the UN Secretary General back then said, yes, okay, it's a good idea, let's have a global IGF and let's host it under the UN. And in a way, you never had to deal with, who's the originator of that, is that inclusive? The model and the originator was set. But in the national IGFs, these things always has to come to different ways. So, and there are some ways that work better than the other. We heard from Mattia that in Italy, we tried the government to initiate that. We were very close until when the government fell, and so it didn't initiate that, and then the community had to gather that together. We heard from Harimino how they did do that in Madagascar, in building up the institution. But then, we have, different realities, different situations like of the country's economy and development. So it's not, I think there is no one way to go, but the principles are there and they're important to uphold them. The inclusiveness, the inclusive in all stakeholders. I see that Alexander is back, and I see Jennifer has her hands up. So, and we have 1 minute left. So I'll give 20 seconds to Alexander to wrap it up, then to Jennifer to ask her question and share that. And then we see a couple of hands more. We will see if we can manage some questions before we leave the floor to Rinalia. But go, Alexander, because you disappeared and you came back.
Apologize. So we managed to establish a legal entity in 2020. Preparation ran almost throughout 2019. Now we have a legal entity according under the local law on civil associations with 10 founding members, a 3-member supervisory board, a chairman of the supervisory board, and 1 coordinator, in accordance with the nomenclature of the IGF Secretariat. And in the same time, this person is authorized to represent the association. Thus, our NRI now has a legal structure, a bank account, authorized persons, oversight, and assembly as a highest body according to the local law. Of course, it is agreed that the coordinator will be replaced because in every 3 years, for example, because the topic of this meeting was how to ensure not only the same people talking same things all the time. Even this is good for continuity. And just for an example, how to keep volunteers motivated, or how to assure change of leadership, etc. we have a solution that we are going to use the triple principle, meaning the past, the current, and incoming coordinator, just in order to assure the continuity. So I can announce now already we are in discussion of electing another new incoming coordinator that I will believe will inject some new blood and a new line of communication with the sub-regional and regional initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you. In the meantime, I see that the chat is very active, and unfortunately, this is another thing that we have to learn. The multitasking that Zoom and those online meetings requires, it's next level. Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Andrea. I guess in the interest of time, I'll keep this really brief. I just wanted to very quickly respond to what Liana, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, her very important point about how do you make sure we get, participation from all the stakeholders, not just, one particular stakeholder group. And one thing we did at APIGF last year was to conduct a mapping exercise of all stakeholders to see which regions, which stakeholders that we are not getting enough participation from, and actually targeting how to outreach to these stakeholders. We did a sub-regional grouping to see, Central Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Oceania, and all of that, just to see the kind of participation we're receiving, both from participation side as well as from the planning side, because our multi-stakeholder steering group is completely open for participation from anyone. And that is a good and a bad thing. It's good because people who want to volunteer and are interested in internet governance and shaping the program are able to join with no problems. But also the other thing is, there's also people who don't know about, internet governance or these fora that they can join in. And that's where targeted outreach and specific invitation can actually bring these people, these stakeholders, these sectors and underserved communities into the fold and into the discussion. So both in terms of participation and also the organizing part, I think a lot of NRIs are struggling with this. The global IGF is struggling with this, but to create at least a level setting of the data of who's actually participating and who's participating in the organization of the agenda is very important.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. This is this is indeed the challenge probably. Liana, I see your hands up just for a brief question, very brief, and then we need to wrap it up this session.
Yeah, okay. Hi, hello everyone.
Hello,
this is Liana speaking. It's not a question actually, but rather a comment to Liliana's question on the model or the recommendation how can be inclusive to make sure to assure the inclusivity. Probably for the Armenia, what we have that's a permanently working group that we have a council, Internet Governance Council, and that council that is very similar to what others have as a steering group, etc. That group is actually a multi-stakeholder group, and in this way we make sure that we have this dialogue within all the stakeholders, and that this group is responsible for organizing the IGF. So I think that can be a non-biased way that she also put in a comment. In this way, we can ensure inclusivity. And if you give me some moments to share the Armenian perspective, I can do that. If not, maybe I can do that later, Andrea. That's up to you.
Thank you. I think we need to
okay, that's
end
fine.
it here. Sorry,
Thank
Liana.
you.
Thank you. Alexander, is that a old end or it's a new one or it's
No.
Okay. So I see, Fortune, you have a question or a comment? Please be brief, and then we really need to.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good to see you, everyone. I would like also to mention about the Albanian IGF experience. We have just organized one annual IGF, and after the COVID-19, we have this kind of issues, but to organize people in communities to put together, because everyone get tired a lot, and almost no one can even want to discuss by online, because as every one of us know that internet governance is a in-person discussion, and this is the point to have an in-person discussion. I would like also to mention an issue that we are facing, that we are trying to have a legal entity, as North Macedonia has done, but according to the national law legislation, they needed some taxes or people that needed to be paid with a fixed salaries, and for this reason that we don't have like a legal entity and other issues, that we have difficulties to receiving funds as from the IGF. So maybe we'll need to have another discussion in another point, how countries like Albania and others can be solve this kind of issues in order to receiving funds.
Yes, this is probably one of the more thorniest, the hardest issue for many of national IGFs, the funding, but we don't have time for that one now. But this is something that I thank again Olga and the SEEDIG for organizing that. It was a brilliant idea to get this sharing of experiences. Before I leave it to Rinaria, I want just to ask a series of fire questions and just people raise hands. Just came up to my mind, probably will feel easy. So how many of those national IGFs that we have here are actually actively supported by the national government? Those that really have the government to support them, funds them, participate in them. Just raise your hand if you are supported.
Supported in not in financial way, but any kind of
either,
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay.
So we have 3. 4, and Mattia 5. And how many of you have support in terms of funding or institutional support or logistical support from the National Registry, from the CCTLD? Is it 2? Is it 3? Okay. Good. So we see that, and yes, and Sandra as well from Juridic.
May I?
Who's yes?
May I shortly intervene here?
Please, very shortly.
I just want, yes, sure. So that's not a support in kind or in finance, but for example, I just wanted to explain this, that these, for example, 10 members are carefully chosen, but we were really trying to put together respective members of different stakeholders. So, for example, we have the chair of the executive board of CCTLD. Now we even have the chair of the executive board of the Helsinki Committee of Human Rights on board. We have also university professors who are directly involved, for example, in the law faculty, teaching internet and law, etc., etc. And if at that level, I can say we are supported by the CCTLD, but not directly by the government.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. It was just out of kind of statistics, because traditionally either the CCTLD or the government used to play a role, but now I see that things is evolving. I think it's a good learning from us, and I think it's very interesting for the global IGF for Ania also. I'm sure that you are very close to those developments to see which are the difficulties that national IGFs encounter, and I can tell how useful was the NRI toolkit on that, and probably continuing on that line of kind of institutional recognition or guidance from the global IGF will be something to further explore. Unfortunately, Harimino and Mary, we don't have time for more questions. You can put them in the chat. We need to leave the floor to the last part of the IGF, and it's a dear friend, not unknown to many of us, certainly not to me, Rinalia from ISOC, the Senior Vice President for Strategy, who will be holding a capacity building workshop on strengthening regional, interregional cooperation between IGF initiatives, which is, I think we started the work already with this session. So looking forward to learn more about that. On me, thank you again. And we'll see you soon around online, but hopefully offline soon. Thank you, Rinalia. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. It's a pity that we don't have more time, because the discussions were just getting heated just now in terms of the different experiences of the IGFs, the local and national IGFs. Thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you to the organizers. I'm very, very happy to be here. I actually have a slide deck that I'd like to share to keep me focused. If you can enable screen sharing, that would be helpful. Okay, let's see. Here we go.
You're a co-host now, Renali. You can share. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, all fine.
Yes. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So Olga sent me an invitation, and she asked me if she hoped that I remembered her. And she said that her first ICANN meeting, she was a next gen participant in ICANN 58. And I actually remember her for sure. And I have evidence of her, the impression that she made at ICANN. This is ICANN 60 at Abu Dhabi, 2 meetings after the Copenhagen meeting. So Olga definitely made an impression there, because she made it on this deck of cards produced by ICANN Wiki. So well done, Olga. I'm gonna go into full slide mode now. I had a briefing from members of the organizing team, and they asked me to address these topics: improving engagement strategies and outreach, dealing with volunteer participant burnout, bringing in fresh talent, connecting regional and local communities, cooperation between different initiatives. So I'm going to share some initial thoughts. They may address some or most of this, and hopefully we get to a block of time towards the end where we can have more of a discussion. If you ask me specific questions about them, then I can share my thoughts as well. But before we go in there, I'd love to have a little bit of information from you. It's just 3 questions, and the team is going to launch a poll. Sandra, did you raise a hand? No? Okay. Can we launch the poll now? Okay, here we go. Okay, so it looks like we have the results here. Many of you have participated in IGF-related events and activities outside of your country and region, actually more than 80%. So that means that cross-regional pollination of ideas and engagement is already happening. In terms of the number of IGF initiatives you've participated in, actually, most of you are quite seasoned, more than 2, and definitely quite a number, 42% more than 5. And those, for me, are on their way to becoming full champions of internet governance. And in terms of participation in schools on internet governance, I see that 65% said yes, so excellent. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Thank you very much for the data. Can we end the poll? Okay, so what does it take to strengthen regional and inter-regional cooperation between IGF initiatives? And these are some initial thoughts. For me, what's really important in terms of the trigger is actually having dedicated champions. And many of you are in this community right now. And these are people who make the effort to build up their knowledge and network and mobilize resources around them. They put in quite a lot of time and effort. They participate in a number of processes and programs to achieve success. They are continuous learners and are fueled by a sense of purpose, drives them forward. They initiate, lead, or help hold initiatives together. And they are instrumental in furthering regional and cross-regional cooperation because they build the network and they tap that network. The other thing that's needed to strengthen cooperation is a commitment by the initiatives and the participants to openness, just being inclusive, and the multi-stakeholder collaboration, where people come together, share knowledge, learn from each other, figure out issues and solutions together in multi-stakeholder fashion. So in the previous session, there were some comments saying that, well, we don't want the government to be driving the agenda, but they are certainly a stakeholder, an important one, and it would be great if they can also be part of the process. In terms of key resources for strengthening cooperation, these are the three that I think are fundamental. One is financial resources, the other one is training and capacity building, and the final one is actually the network. And the Internet Society actually provides all of these. We provide financial support to IGF initiatives at all levels, local, national, regional, and global, and we do it through the Internet Society Foundation. If you haven't applied for it, I suggest that you look into it. The other thing that we do is we also do training and capacity building, and this is on top of support that we provide to schools of Internet governance around the world. The training and capacity building that we have comprise online learning. There are courses that you can take, and currently the Internet governance course that was relaunched this year in March has just passed the 1,000 participants mark as of September. And we also have fellowships such as early career fellowships, mid-career fellowships, and of course the IGF Youth Ambassadors. And also the network of allies and experts across all levels who are members of the Internet Society. So these are images of Internet champions. Some of them come in with a specific focus on Internet governance at a very early age. For example, Abdias Zambrano here, 2020 IGF Youth Ambassador. Some of them actually go into doing concrete things on the ground that actually grow the Internet more, such as Maria Valeria Sauls Cuevas in doing the IXP in Mexico. And we have a bunch of them. And what we want to do is we want to grow these champions because they contribute to the ecosystem of Internet governance. And I want to flag 6 individuals as examples of these champions. Of course, from the community at SEEDIG, there is Olga and there is Alexandra Ivankovic. They start somewhere, they're always learning, they tap the network, and Olga is now chair of the SEEDIG, and Alexandra is currently working on starting Youth IGF in Serbia. Anju Mangal from Fiji in the Asia-Pacific region. She started as a member of the local ISOC chapter in the Pacific Islands, and she went on to be an IGF Youth Ambassador, a MAG member, and she's going to be the next chair of the Asia-Pacific Regional IGF. Dustin Loop from the USA, he's executive director of the ISOC DC chapter, and he's currently co-chair of the IGF USA. And these two are more technical focused. Raul Zambrano from Bolivia, he was an ISOC fellow since 2017. He's the chapter president of ISOC Bolivia, and he's currently the IGF MAG member from the technical community, serving for 2 terms. And Ramanu Bio from Benin, he is an ISOC Next Generation Leaders Program, and he participated in various fellowship programs across the Internet organizations. And he started the annual DNS forums in Benin, which now includes Women DNS Hackathon. And he has made the ISOC Benin chapter the most active chapter in Africa currently. So these are examples of essentially Internet champions who are also championing aspects of Internet governance. And what we need to do collectively is to grow the pool so that you have the dynamism and energy to fuel all the levels of initiatives on IGFs around the world. So just a little bit about the Internet Society, in case some of you don't know. We believe that the Internet is for everyone. And we're currently, through our 5-year strategy, working on growing the Internet to make it bigger so that those who don't have access can have access, and making it stronger. Because as you know, you are familiar with the topics, there are always efforts to undermine the Internet and shutting it down and weakening encryption and all that. And our strategy revolves around building, promoting, and defending the Internet. But our focus is also in building and supporting the communities that make the Internet work. And so part of that is also, by extension, the Internet governance community. This is the sort of like the last 3 slides. So for 30 years, and next year, ISOC is going to be 30, ISOC has been empowering people to contribute to the development of the Internet and to Internet governance, primarily to make sure that the Internet remains open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy. And our empowerment programs are global. I mean, we try to reach all parts of the world. And the approach is grounded in social learning. We want to listen to people and we want to encourage them to learn together with us, because our operating context where the Internet is concerned is constantly evolving, and we have to keep up with what the issues are and figure out what the solutions could be. And so what the Internet Society provides as a global community is that it is a network that has a lot of expertise, context, and influence. And I heard stories from the previous session where people are saying they're having challenges in drawing people into the initiative that they're starting. In some of my experience, when you want to reach someone of influence in your country and they're not listening to you, you tap a regional global network and it goes out and it comes back through the connections of that network to the person that you want to influence. And through that, the connection happens. And so it's something that you can use quite effectively. And so the pitch is basically the opportunities are there, you can leverage it, and it's basically something for you to advance the agenda of the IGFs. So the invitation is to please share these opportunities through your network. If you would like to participate in training programs, please do so. We will be announcing soon the 2022 IGF Youth Ambassadors cohort, and our hope is to grow the future leaders like Olga and the others that I've highlighted today, because they're instrumental in actually making sure that there is cross-initiative cooperation at any level. And we can work together on building the next generation of Internet leaders. The last thing I'm going to touch is actually how to deal with burnout. Now, burnout is something very personal. It is experienced at the individual level. But for people who are organizing initiatives, you are basically looking at volunteer burnout in terms of participation, engagement, energy. One of the things that you can do is actually to raise awareness about how individuals can care about themselves more to restore their energy. And this is an aspect of neuroscience. It's drawn from Sandra Dalton Smith, who is a doctor. There are 7 types of rest for human beings. It's about restoration in 7 key areas of life: physical, mental, sensory, creative, emotional, social, and spiritual. The work that you do in driving the IGF initiatives is fueled by a deep sense of purpose. And so for people to have that feeling, and it's really challenging to generate that in a virtual environment or online because you can't draw energy from each other, is to think about how to make the sessions more focused, don't have too many sessions, prioritize, and think about innovative ways of engagement. I think it's quite challenging. Many people and many organizations have tried, and it would be useful to just have a sharing about those different approaches, what tools work best, what didn't, and what are simple means of getting certain aspects of discussions done and follow up. So I will just stop there, and I hope that we can go into a discussion where you can pose some questions and we can start from there. So,
thanks a lot, Renalia. So this is the right time to ask questions to Renalia, if you have any. I see the hand up from Denaya. Dennis, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much. Can you hear me? I just want to confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, Denaya,
okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Renalia, and I'm Denaya Dennis from South Sudan. I have been a member of the Internet Society way back about 6 years now. because in South Sudan we didn't have, and then I signed up in the portal to join the Kenyan chapter. And then recently a team of South Sudanese young men tried to form the chapter here in South Sudan, which was granted. But then the issue is the kind of leadership we have is a little bit, reluctant in terms of organizing the teams and, bringing people together. And I just looked through the website when you presented about the opportunities and the foundation grants which are there. I want to know if, for example, my organization, I lead an organization which is doing similar work to Internet of Things and championing STEM activities, working with the young people, whether an organization is eligible to apply for those grants. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Danaya. I cannot answer that question because I think the foundation team is better placed for it. So if you can send me the information, the question and the information, I can forward it if you don't have direct contact with the team, because they have to look at qualifications and I think the requirements are important for them to know. But if you qualify, then I don't think there is any issue. Yes, I'll type my email right now. Is there another question?
I don't see any other hands up. The comments are, everyone is thankful. Everyone is saying that that was excellent to hear from you as always. So yeah, I don't see any additional questions or comments.
Okay, in that case, you might want to go back to the questions left over from the previous session and pick it up again.
Thanks a lot, Renalia, for being with us and for sharing this useful and important tips that you've mentioned in your presentation. That's always a pleasure to hear from you.
My pleasure.
So dear all, we have 10 more minutes until the top of the hour when we need to close our event. So in case someone had something to say but did not have an opportunity before, this is the very right moment to do that. Just let us know. Okay, I don't see any other indications. And Jennifer, yes, please.
Thank you, Olga. I guess because I've already mentioned this in the chat, but just to say it again for people who aren't following the chat pod, I think a lot of NRIs have adapted really well to the situation that we're facing both last year and this year, like evolving from purely online and virtual meetings to some hybrid forms of meetings as well. And I think a lot of us are also thinking about how to include and bring in new people, new stakeholders, people who aren't traditionally in the internet governance community into our discussions, because it's so important to include them. We can't talk about policy making, we can't talk about issues that impact the entire society without including those that there are not currently in the conversation. And just really briefly to sum up what I mentioned in the chat is that it requires a lot of critical and creative solutions and pilot programs, because a lot of people who aren't already involved in these programs need to know about it, need to know that they are able to participate and talk about these issues. And one of the solutions, at least in our APR-IGF, we try to redesign our fellowship program to reach out to stakeholders, students, people who are underserved, to be able to participate. And it is very difficult to map what is traditionally a human-to-human interaction, nonverbal communication, and that kind of relationship building into an online space. But I think we are able to replicate some of it. I think a lot of times when we're looking at virtual and non-virtual, most people right now are evolving towards, looking at the successes from both forms of participation and combining it into something that's new and improved, that can actually fill in the gaps of what has come before. And for the Asia Pacific region, a lot of people who don't have access that is very challenging to try to get them to participate in a purely online mode. But I think a lot of these questions, NRI colleagues and other people here on the call are grappling with, and it's really good to hear and learn from everyone. So I think that's my takeaway, at least for this.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer. I can't agree more that people attend meetings not so much for the knowledge, but for connection, networking, and experience. And probably in some not so distant future, we will not use even these hybrid meetings title, but they would become our new normal, as we call it now, just a bit reshaped, but at some point we will get used to that. And I also see two more hands, Anya and then Liliana.
So maybe I can just very quickly, firstly, to thank everyone for such interesting and rich presentations. And it's been, again, a learning experience in this session, and sort of very overwhelming, because it's very warm to be in this community of very nice people and dear colleagues. I wanted to follow up on the very good question that Liliana asked at the beginning, well, somewhere in the middle of the session, about the monitoring and about fostering the inclusion from the perspective of the IGF. So it's a huge challenge, and I think it's extremely important if you want to achieve a really inclusive process. That means of all countries, of all stakeholder groups, of all age groups, of gender groups, and so on. Then obviously it requires quite a strategic process and approach. And what we are doing, what Jennifer said at the beginning, we're starting basically from numbers. We're doing analysis on who's participating from where and in which numbers. So I can tell you that, for example, on the statistics, on average, we have around 160 different countries represented at the IGF. Traditionally, I mean, at the annual meeting, but we're also looking at who's represented in the institutional work through the online means of deliveries. And so through those types of countries, it's very technically easy for us to see what are those countries that are not represented. So I think I can give you an example. We have a very good, I would say, really very good quality relationships with the African region overall. A number of countries are involved. But for example, there's Angola that's always been a challenge for us. And that being said, that means that collectively we had zero representation across the last, let's say, 10 years of the IGF. But then again, that's changing. And I think for the NRIs, I'm sure that colleagues would confirm, it's a matter of evolution. For us, for example, Madagascar was really an exotic place somewhere down there. But then once we had, for example, Haremino, and after that we had colleagues on the MAG, it really one thing led to another. So now there's quite a solid community from Madagascar of different stakeholder groups participating. But I do think beyond the numbers, the process of inclusion is much more nuanced and much more complex for analysis. And I refer primarily to the stakeholder groups. I think we should not go into a trap that we have only 4 major stakeholder groups per the IGF's classification, plus additional ones such as media or intergovernmental organizations, international organizations. But I think we should look at each stakeholder group as a very nuanced structure, because in, for example, civil society or in government, not just one entity represents the same stakeholder group. There are disciplines which are represented in the stakeholder groups which are historically been unrepresented at the IGF. And we are mapping different disciplines internally. So that means that it's quite a time-consuming job because we're doing it manually to a good extent. But we are looking, which sectors and which disciplines within a stakeholder group are represented at the IGF. And when you look through those analyses, then it was very easy for us, for example, 2-3 years back to underline that, for example, sectors or disciplines related to environment or climate change are very much unrepresented at the IGF. Agriculture as well. Banking sector to a good extent was unrepresented, and so on. So, for example, in concretely on environment, there were different ways how we approach this, and I think we now have quite a good community of environmental experts from different stakeholder groups represented at the IGF. That there's obviously the multi-stakeholder advisory group, so we always look to make a recommendation for the Secretary General's office in terms of the disciplines that could be represented on the MAG, just because the MAG members keep the linkages with their communities and also with their stakeholder groups. So usually they get peers on board. There was, for example, a case with Mattia and with the legislators. I think that's when the positive trend really started, in addition to 2019. Sandra will be the best to speak on that. And then in addition to that, the IGF has quite a number of capacity development opportunities. We're very thankful to the NRIs. They are our critical resources to really reach the underserved regions in terms of their representation at the IGF. So, for example, the change this year relates to countries such as Vietnam or Cambodia, and that's really thanks to the capacity development workshop we delivered together with the Asia Pacific IGF, and they were very generous to allow us to do that. The travel support of the IGF also puts at center people who are underrepresented or unrepresented, stakeholder-wise, regionally-wise, country-wise, age-wise, gender-wise, and so on. And also other different forms. But I think it's very important that we exchange experiences on this. And what somebody mentioned, I think it was maybe Alexander, I'm not quite sure, but somebody mentioned the word data. And I think that's what we need to work with, in the digital sphere, just gather the inputs and then try to process that in order to create good strategies to facilitate engagement with those who are basically the missing voices at the IGF. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Anya. I would kindly ask Liliana to hold for a while because Sandra needs to leave us. So I would give the floor to her for short closing remarks, and also encourage everyone to join Eurodic's extra event that is happening right after hours on delay tolerant networks. So if this is your topic, please join them as well.
Thank you, Olga, for promoting this event. Indeed. I think this discussion showed that both modules are important and will stay for the next few weeks or years. When it's about knowledge transfer, hard facts, and somebody who is just interested in getting to know what the issue is, I think online participation is the tool of choice. But if you would like to have input, if you would enter into creative discussions, then you really need to attend an event. And I think people will in the future choose very selectively which format they pick and which works best in which situation. And I'm very convinced that we need to go back to physical events as soon as possible, because what I'm worried about is we are the Internet Governance for us. We are not decision-making for us, but we are decision-shaping for us. And this decision-shaping process can only take place if you get this creative input from discussions with others. And these discussions are usually not facilitated when you have a list of speakers and presentations and these kind of things. These discussions are taking place on the corridor. And in the future, that might also have an impact on the venues that we rent. We will possibly have smaller rooms with bigger screens, but then we have more sitting areas with a lot of coffee machines next to it. So I think this has to be taken into consideration, that this will also have an impact on what we are going to rent and choose, and that we possibly offer more joy, pleasure, wine, coffee, cake, and these kind of things when we meet physically. But we might do it not as often as we did in the past. And I think this is also a good climate aspect, that we are all doing a little less travel, because it was quite extensive what we all did. So I think it's good to have an alternative. I leave now immediately because I have to open up the other, and I thank everyone for inviting me to this discussion. I found it really very useful and informative. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and good luck with your event as well. So Liliana, the floor is yours now, and afterwards we will close.
Okay, so very briefly, thank you, Olga, and thank you, SEEDIG, for organizing this event today. It was much helpful specifically for me to understand and to hear all the positive aspects of in the inclusion. And I would not much be longer in this, but what the previous speakers already said, I would only echo. Open and inclusive and transparent process, and including everybody else on board, it is very much important for developing the internet governance initiatives in the country. It was a warm welcome from all of you, and for which I'm very thankful to hear from each side of the world everybody's experience, and it was a really great pleasure and honor to be today with you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Liliana, and also huge thanks to all of you for finding time to join us and also to stay with us for these 2 hours. We hope that 2 hours is quite a lot to discuss and to reconnect in this online setting at this moment. But it appears that there is so much for us to share and to talk about with each other that definitely we would need many more hours to cover everything, every single aspect of our work. Anyway, I hope we can continue this type of discussions. Again, many thanks to everyone. A small announcement that our next event within the SEEDIG 7 series will be happening already next week on 21st October. It will be in the CTalk interview format with Mirjana Tasic from Serbia, who is one of the internet pioneers in the region. So if you have time, please mark your calendars and join us again. We are always happy to see all of you.